Before America could confront the Soviet Union, it had to see it. Before presidents could decide how to defend the free world, before generals could plan for nuclear war, before diplomats could challenge Moscow with confidence, Washington needed something more powerful than speeches, rumors, or fear. It needed proof. And in the darkest years of the Cold War, that proof came from one of the strangest aircraft ever built by American hands. A fragile, black, high-flying machine with no weapons, no armor, no missiles, and wings so long it looked less like a warplane than a jet-powered glider. It could not fight. It could not defend itself. It could barely land without help from another pilot chasing it down the runway in a car. But high above the clouds, at altitudes near 70,000 feet, the Lockheed U-2 gave the United States something the Soviet system tried desperately to deny the outside world: sight. It pierced the Iron Curtain not with bombs, but with cameras. It turned Soviet secrecy into photographs. And in a nuclear age, that was not just intelligence. That was power. This was the Dragon Lady, the American spy plane that exposed Soviet secrecy. It was born from a simple but terrifying question: what was the Soviet Union really capable of? In the early 1950s, that question haunted Washington. The United States knew the Soviet Union was building bombers, missiles, nuclear weapons, air bases, radar sites, industrial complexes, and military infrastructure across a vast closed empire. But knowing that something existed was not the same as knowing how much existed, where it was, how fast it was growing, or whether Moscow's threats matched reality. Behind the Iron Curtain, Soviet power was hidden by geography, censorship, military secrecy, and political control. American leaders were being asked to make decisions about the survival of the nation with incomplete information. If they underestimated the Soviets, America could be caught unprepared. If they overestimated them, the United States could spend fortunes and escalate tensions based on shadows. In a Cold War shaped by nuclear weapons, ignorance itself was dangerous. So America faced a hard question that still feels uncomfortable today. If flying over Soviet territory could help prevent a nuclear surprise, did that make the mission necessary? Or did it make it reckless? The answer depends on where you stand in history. From Moscow, a U-2 overflight was a violation of Soviet airspace and a direct challenge to sovereignty. From Washington, it was a way to reduce the risk of strategic blindness. President Dwight D. Eisenhower understood both sides of that danger. He had commanded Allied forces in World War II. He understood what surprise could do to nations. But he also understood that an exposed spy mission could destroy diplomacy. He wanted intelligence, but he did not want war. He wanted facts, but he knew that collecting them could ignite a crisis. That tension shaped the entire U-2 program. The aircraft was not just an engineering project. It was a political gamble, approved at the highest levels of the American government. The solution came from a small, secretive, and unusually fast-moving engineering culture inside Lockheed, known as Skunk Works. Clarence Kelly Johnson, one of the most brilliant aircraft designers in American history, was asked to solve a problem that seemed almost impossible. Build an aircraft that could fly higher than Soviet fighters, carry advanced cameras, travel deep into denied territory, and return with usable evidence. Johnson's answer was radical because it rejected almost everything a normal military aircraft was supposed to be. The U-2 did not need guns because it was not supposed to fight. It did not need armor because armor was weight. It did not need the rugged strength of a bomber because its mission was not to absorb punishment. Every pound mattered. Every unnecessary system was a threat to altitude. The aircraft was stripped down to its purpose: climb high, stay high, carry sensors, bring back evidence. Its real weapon was not speed or firepower. Its weapon was altitude. That design made the U-2 extraordinary, but it also made it unforgiving. Its long, narrow wings gave it glider-like efficiency in the thin air of the upper atmosphere, but those same wings made it delicate, difficult, and unusual to handle. At extreme altitude, early U-2 pilots operated inside a narrow flight envelope where the difference between flying too slowly and flying too fast could be dangerously small. Too slow, and the aircraft could stall. Too fast, and the airframe could be overstressed. Pilots referred to this danger zone as the coffin corner, a phrase that captured the strange reality of flying an aircraft that existed at the edge of aerodynamic possibility. The U-2 was not easy heroism. It demanded discipline, concentration, and physical endurance. Its pilots sat alone, sealed inside a pressure suit, flying for hours above most of the atmosphere, where a mistake could become fatal very quickly. Even landing the aircraft became part of the legend. The U-2 used a bicycle-style landing gear arrangement rather than a conventional wide landing gear layout. And because of its long wings and glider-like lift, it did not want to settle onto the runway. It floated. It reacted to crosswinds. It demanded exact control in the final seconds of flight. The pilot's view near touchdown was limited, so another experienced U-2 pilot would chase the aircraft from behind in a high-performance car, calling out the aircraft's height over the radio. 2 feet, 1 foot, hold it, touch. There is something almost unbelievable about that image. A machine built to photograph the most secret military sites of the Soviet Empire, guided back to Earth by a man in a car. But that contradiction is exactly what made the U-2 so remarkable. It was awkward because it was specialized. It was fragile because it was optimized. It was difficult because it was designed to do something few aircraft on Earth could do. The first great achievement of the U-2 was not that it found one dramatic secret, but that it changed the entire intelligence picture. Before reliable spy satellites, high-altitude photography was one of the few ways the United States could directly examine Soviet military power. The U-2 could photograph airfields, bomber bases, industrial sites, missile ranges, and military installations that had been hidden from ordinary observation. Analysts could study the images, compare them over time, measure facilities, count aircraft, examine construction, and test assumptions. That mattered because the Cold War was full of claims, fears, and estimates. Was there a bomber gap? Was there a missile gap? Was Moscow stronger than it appeared? Or was Soviet secrecy magnifying American fear? The U-2 did not answer every question, but it gave American leaders something far better than speculation. It gave them photographs. This is where the patriotic power of the story becomes clear. The U-2 was not simply a spy plane sneaking across borders. It was part of a larger American system. Engineers who could build what seemed impossible. Pilots willing to fly at the edge of human and mechanical limits. Analysts capable of turning film into strategic knowledge. And presidents who needed facts before making decisions that could affect millions of lives. The Soviet system depended on secrecy. The American response was to build a machine that could make secrecy visible. That was the real victory of the U-2. It did not destroy a target. It did something more subtle, and in some moments, more important. It reduced the power of the unknown. But was the U-2 invisible? No. That is one of the myths that needs to be handled carefully. The early U-2 was difficult to intercept, but it was not a magic aircraft. Soviet radar could sometimes detect or track high-altitude intruders, The problem for Moscow was not always seeing the aircraft. The problem was reaching it. In the mid-1950s, Soviet fighters often could not climb high enough to bring down a U-2 effectively. For a short but crucial window, American altitude outpaced Soviet interception capability. That window gave Washington extraordinary intelligence. But every successful overflight also gave the Soviets a stronger reason to improve their air defense system. Radar improved, surface-to-air missiles improved, procedures improved. The U-2 was not operating outside history. It was racing against it. That raises one of the most important questions in the entire story. Did the U-2 make the Cold War safer, or did it make it more dangerous? On one hand, it gave American leaders better evidence. Better evidence could reduce panic, challenge exaggerated fears, and prevent decisions based purely on worst-case thinking. On the other hand, every overflight violated Soviet airspace and risked a crisis if exposed. Intelligence can calm uncertainty, but the act of collecting it can provoke confrontation. The U-2 lived inside that contradiction. It was a tool of stability and a source of danger at the same time. For a few years, the gamble held. Then, on May 1st, 1960, the gamble failed in front of the world. Francis Gary Powers was flying a U-2 over Soviet territory when a Soviet surface-to-air missile brought the aircraft down. The mission was meant to collect intelligence, but it became one of the most embarrassing diplomatic disasters of the Eisenhower administration. Powers survived. That fact changed everything. If the aircraft had disappeared and the pilot had died, the United States might have had more room to deny or blur the mission. But the Soviets had the pilot. They had wreckage. They had equipment. They had evidence. The United States initially relied on a cover story involving a high-altitude weather research aircraft. Khrushchev waited. Then he revealed that Powers was alive and that the Soviet Union had recovered proof of the aircraft's true purpose. The cover story collapsed. The secret program was suddenly public. The Paris summit, which had been expected to address major Cold War tensions, was wrecked. The U-2 had given America priceless intelligence, but now it had given Moscow a public propaganda victory. This is where the story must avoid an unfair simplification. Francis Gary Powers was not the man who created the policy. He was the pilot assigned to fly the mission. The hard question is not whether one pilot should carry all the blame. The harder question is whether any nation can gather the intelligence it believes it needs without eventually forcing individual men to carry the human cost. Powers was interrogated, tried in the Soviet Union, sentenced, and later exchanged in a prisoner swap involving Soviet spy Rudolf Abel. After returning to the United States, he was debriefed and eventually recognized for not giving away major classified information beyond what the Soviets could already determine from the wreckage. His story became part of the U-2 legend because it showed the human vulnerability behind the machine. The Dragon Lady could fly above 70,000 feet, but its pilot was still a man alone over hostile territory. The Powers incident changed everything, but it did not end the U-2. It proved that altitude alone was no longer enough to guarantee safety over the Soviet Union. It accelerated the push toward satellite reconnaissance and toward faster, more survivable aircraft, including the later A-12 and SR-71 family. It also changed the political meaning of every future mission. After May 1960, a U-2 flight was no longer merely a secret intelligence operation. It carried the memory of wreckage in Soviet hands, a captured pilot, a collapsed cover story, and a failed summit. Yet the aircraft remained valuable because no system replaces another overnight. Satellites were improving, but aircraft still had flexibility. A U-2 could be sent to a crisis zone, carry specialized sensors, and return with imagery that policymakers urgently needed. 2 years after the Powers incident, that flexibility would place the U-2 at the center of the most dangerous nuclear confrontation in history. In October 1962, Cuba became the stage for the U-2's second great act. After Fidel Castro's revolution, Cuba had moved into the Soviet orbit, and for the United States, the island was not an abstract geopolitical concern. It was roughly 90 miles from Florida. American intelligence began observing signs of a major Soviet military buildup: ships, equipment, air defenses, construction activity, and military personnel. But the decisive question remained unresolved. Were the Soviets placing offensive nuclear missiles in Cuba? Suspicion was not enough. Reports were not enough. Political instinct was not enough. President John F. Kennedy needed proof. Once again, proof meant photographs. On October 14, 1962, a U-2 photographed Soviet missile sites in Cuba. Analysts studied the film, identified the installations, and the evidence reached the White House. The Cuban Missile Crisis had begun. This moment shows why the U-2 mattered so deeply. The aircraft did not create the crisis. It exposed it. That distinction is important. The missiles were already being installed. The danger already existed. But until the U-2 brought back the images, the danger was not fully visible to American decision-makers. Once the photographs existed, the problem could no longer be treated as rumor or possibility. It had coordinates. It had shapes on film. It had physical evidence. The U-2 turned uncertainty into a presidential emergency. And that creates another difficult question. Did the aircraft save America from strategic surprise? Or did it force a confrontation that could have led to nuclear war? The most careful answer is that it did both. It revealed a threat that could not be ignored, and by revealing it, forced leaders on both sides toward a decision point. In the Cuban Missile Crisis, photographs had political power. A report could be denied. A rumor could be dismissed. A source could be questioned. But a photograph changes the room. It does not automatically answer every question, because analysts still have to interpret what they see and leaders still have to choose a response. But photography narrows the space for denial. It gives planners targets, timelines, and evidence. It gives diplomats something concrete. It gives presidents the confidence to challenge an adversary without relying only on suspicion. That is what the U-2 gave Kennedy. Not a solution, but a foundation for decision-making. Airstrike, invasion, blockade, quarantine, negotiation. Every option now had to be debated against the reality shown in those images. The U-2's role in Cuba also exposed the cost of intelligence. On October 27, 1962, Major Rudolph Anderson Jr. was flying a U-2 mission over Cuba when his aircraft was shot down by a surface-to-air missile. He was killed. That day became one of the most dangerous moments of the crisis. An American pilot was dead. A reconnaissance aircraft had been destroyed. The pressure to respond increased. The mission that had helped reveal the danger now became part of the danger itself. This is the part of the U-2 story that must be told with respect. The aircraft was not an abstract machine moving through history. It was flown by men in pressure suits, alone in thin air, carrying the burden of intelligence in moments when the wrong decision could change the world. So how much risk should a country ask one pilot to carry when the information he brings back could shape the fate of millions? There is no easy answer, but the U-2 program existed because American leaders believed the risk of ignorance could be even greater. In a nuclear confrontation, not knowing can be deadly. not knowing what the adversary has, where it is located, how quickly it is being prepared, or whether a threat is real, can push nations toward panic or paralysis. The U-2 was dangerous because it went looking, but it was valuable because what it found could prevent leaders from acting blindly. That is the central paradox of the Dragon Lady. The aircraft itself was full of contradictions. It looked delicate, yet it had strategic weight. It was slow compared with later reconnaissance aircraft, yet it transformed the Cold War intelligence picture. It was difficult to land, yet it became one of the most persistent reconnaissance platforms in American history. It was designed as a temporary solution before satellites matured, yet the aircraft evolved and remained useful for decades. Later, U-2 variants carried more advanced sensors, communication systems, and intelligence equipment. The modern U-2S is not the same aircraft that first lifted off in the 1950s, but the underlying idea remains recognizable. Carry powerful sensors high above the Earth, collect information, and deliver it to decision makers. That is why the U-2 survived long after the world that created it began to disappear. The Soviet Union fell. Satellites became central to intelligence. Drones transformed reconnaissance, and digital networks changed how data moved. Yet the logic of the U-2 did not vanish. Aircraft can be flexible in ways satellites are not. They can be deployed, configured, and tasked for specific missions. They can carry large payloads and adapt to changing sensors. Even in the 21st century, the U-2 still appeared in headlines when American aircraft gathered information on the Chinese high-altitude balloon that crossed the United States in 2023. A machine born in the early Cold War was still being used to examine a modern surveillance problem. That continuity is remarkable. The Dragon Lady outlived the era that created her because the need she answered never disappeared. The U-2 was not America's fastest aircraft. It was not the strongest. It was not the most glamorous. The SR-71 would later become the darker, faster legend. Satellites would become the dominant symbol of overhead reconnaissance. But the U-2 arrived at the exact moment when the United States needed eyes above a closed empire. It helped reveal Soviet capabilities. It helped challenge inflated fears. It exposed missiles in Cuba. It embarrassed Washington when Powers was captured. It cost lives. It forced presidents to confront the risks of intelligence. And it proved something central to the American Cold War effort: technological courage. Disciplined engineering and operational risk could break through even the most secretive systems on Earth. So why did this fragile, difficult, and seemingly outdated aircraft become decisive at the height of the Cold War? Because it gave America sight when sight was power. It gave presidents evidence when evidence could shape survival. It turned Soviet secrecy into something that could be photographed, measured, and understood. It did not win through force. It won through proof. And in the nuclear age, proof could be as important as any weapon. The U-2 did not simply fly over the Cold War. It changed how America saw it. And once America could see behind the Iron Curtain, Soviet secrecy was never quite as powerful again.